The icy February wind howled through the streets of Loveland, Wyoming Territory, 1878, as Katherine Dawson clutched her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. The telegram crumpled in her palm contained words that would shatter her world forever. Her brother Thomas had gambled away not just their family's savings, but Katherine herself. "Miss Dawson," the station master called, his voice tinged with pity. "There's a gentleman here to see you." Katherine turned, expecting to face the leering saloon owner who now claimed to own her through her brother's debt. Instead, she found herself staring up at a tall stranger with eyes the color of a summer storm. "Miss Dawson?" he asked, removing his hat. "Owen Crawford." "I hear you're in some trouble." Katherine swallowed hard, pride warring with desperation. "My brother's trouble, Mr. Crawford, not mine." Yet she knew better. Thomas had fled, leaving her to face the consequences of his recklessness. $50, Owen said, his voice low. "That's what your brother owes Jasper Morgan." Katherine's cheeks burned with shame. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know." Owen's weathered face remained impassive. "But I do." Hope flickered in Katherine's chest. "You'd pay my brother's debt. Why would you help a stranger?" "I don't aim to pay with money, Miss Dawson." Owen's calloused hands twisted the brim of his hat. "I'll pay it with these hands." Katherine stepped back. "I don't understand." "I mean to work off your brother's debt. My ranch needs tending. Morgan needs money." His gaze met hers steadily. "And you need freedom." In that moment, as the Wyoming wind whipped around them, Katherine realized this stranger was offering her a choice when she thought all choices had been stripped away. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Crawford?" "Come work at my ranch. Cook, clean, help with whatever needs doing. I'll pay Morgan directly for your labor until the debt's settled." He shifted uncomfortably. "It's decent work, Miss Dawson. You have my word." Katherine studied him, searching for deceit in his face and finding none. "And after the debt is paid, you're free to go wherever you please." Owen settled his hat back on his head. "Or stay on with wages if you're so inclined." The alternative loomed before her, a life of servitude to Jasper Morgan, a man known for his cruelty and lecherous behavior. At least this cowboy was offering honest work. "I accept your offer, Mr. Crawford," Katherine said, standing as tall as her 5'4" frame would allow. "But understand this, I am not property to be traded. I am working to clear a debt, nothing more." Owen nodded once, respect flickering in his eyes. "Fair enough, Miss Dawson. We leave at first light." As promised, Owen Crawford arrived the next morning in a wagon laden with supplies. Katherine had spent the night in her rented room above the milliner's shop, packing her meager belongings and writing a scathing letter to her brother should he ever return to Loveland. "Ready?" Owen asked as she approached the wagon, a single carpetbag in hand. "As I'll ever be," Katherine replied, allowing him to help her onto the seat. Their first stop was Jasper Morgan's saloon, a gaudy establishment that had swallowed the fortunes of countless men, including Thomas Dawson. "Wait here," Owen instructed, jumping down from the wagon. Katherine sat rigidly, ignoring the stares of passers-by. Through the dirty saloon windows, she watched Owen confront Morgan, a short, corpulent man with oily hair and a perpetual sneer. Words were exchanged, papers signed, and money counted. When Owen emerged, his jaw was tight with barely contained anger. "Is it done?" Katherine asked. "It's done." Owen climbed back onto the wagon seat. "Your brother's debt is now mine to collect through your work. 6 months should clear it by my calculation." 6 months? The time frame startled her. "That seems excessive for $50. Owen's hands tightened on the reins. "It's not just 50 anymore. Morgan added interest, said your brother agreed to it." His voice softened at her distress. "I'm sorry, Miss Dawson. Morgan's not known for his fairness." Katherine turned away, blinking back tears of frustration. "Let's just go, Mr. Crawford. The sooner we begin, the sooner this ordeal ends." The journey to the Crawford ranch took the better part of the day. As they traveled, the town gave way to rolling prairie, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional stand of cottonwoods. Katherine learned that Owen had inherited the ranch from his father 3 years prior and had been struggling to keep it afloat alone. "Why no ranch hands?" she asked as they crossed a shallow creek. "Can't afford them year-round," Owen admitted. "I hire help during roundup and branding, but otherwise it's just me and my dog, Rusty." "And now me," Katherine added softly. Owen glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Yes, now you." The Crawford Ranch appeared as they crested a rise, a modest 2-story house with a wide porch, a sturdy barn, and several outbuildings. A small herd of cattle grazed in the distance, and chickens scratched in the yard. It wasn't grand, but it was well maintained, speaking to the owner's diligence. "It's not much," Owen said, suddenly self-conscious. "But it's mine." "It's lovely," Katherine replied honestly, something in her chest loosening at the sight of the peaceful homestead. A large red dog bounded toward them as Owen brought the wagon to a stop, barking joyfully. "That's Rusty," Owen said unnecessarily as the dog circled the wagon. Katherine couldn't help but smile at the animal's enthusiasm. "He's certainly welcoming." Owen helped her down from the wagon, careful to keep a respectful distance. "I'll show you to your room. You must be tired from the journey." The interior of the house was surprisingly clean for a bachelor's dwelling, if sparse in decoration. Owen led her upstairs to a small but comfortable bedroom with a patchwork quilt on the bed and faded curtains framing a window that overlooked the prairie. "This was my mother's sewing room," Owen explained. "I cleared it out when Pa died, thought someone might use it someday." Katherine set her carpetbag on the bed. "Thank you, Mr. Crawford." "Owen," he said. "If we're to live under the same roof for 6 months, Mr. Crawford seems a bit formal." Katherine hesitated. "Very well, Owen. And you may call me Katherine," he nodded, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. "Supper's in an hour. Nothing fancy, just beans and biscuits. I hunt when I can, but winter's been lean." After he left, Katherine sank onto the bed, the events of the past 2 days catching up with her. 6 months of servitude to pay for Thomas's folly. It could be worse, she reminded herself. Owen Crawford seemed honorable enough, and the ranch was far preferable to Jasper Morgan's saloon. Katherine took a deep breath and began to unpack her few possessions, determined to make the best of her situation. The routine of ranch life established itself quickly. Katherine rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, usually biscuits, eggs, and coffee. While Owen tended the livestock, she cleaned the house, mended clothes, and planned the next meal. In the afternoons, she often helped with outdoor chores, collecting eggs, feeding chickens, or tending the small vegetable garden that would yield produce come spring. The work was hard but honest, and Katherine found herself adapting to the rhythm of ranch life more easily than she'd expected. Owen worked from sunup to sundown, only stopping for the meals Katherine prepared. He was quiet by nature, but not unfriendly, often sharing stories of the day's work over supper. As February gave way to March, the bitter cold began to ease, and green shoots appeared in the garden. Katherine started keeping a ledger, meticulously noting each day's work against her brother's debt. If Owen noticed, he said nothing. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Katherine broached a subject that had been on her mind. "I'd like to learn to ride," she said, setting aside her mending. "If I'm to be useful around the ranch, I should be mobile." Owen looked up from the bridle he was repairing. "You've never ridden." "I grew up in St. Louis," Katherine explained. "My father was a shopkeeper." There wasn't much call for horsemanship. Owen considered this. "There's a gentle mare in the barn, Daisy. I could teach you if you'd like." The next morning, after breakfast, Owen led a dappled gray mare from the barn. "This is Daisy. She's steady and patient, good for beginners." Katherine approached cautiously, reaching out to stroke the horse's velvety nose. "She's beautiful." "She's older than she looks," Owen said with affection in his voice, "but she's got plenty of good years left." The riding lesson began with Owen showing Katherine how to saddle and bridle the mare, explaining each step carefully. When it came time for Katherine to mount, Owen placed his hands on her waist to help her up, then quickly stepped away as if burned by the contact. "Sorry," he muttered, his ears reddening. "Should have warned you." "It's fine," Katherine assured him, settling into the saddle and trying to ignore the lingering warmth where his hands had been. Owen was a patient teacher, leading Daisy around the corral while instructing Katherine on posture and basic commands. By the end of the hour, Katherine was guiding the mare in slow circles on her own, a triumphant smile on her face. "You're a natural," Owen said as he helped her dismount. Their hands touched briefly, and Katherine felt a peculiar flutter in her stomach. She quickly busied herself with removing Daisy's tack to hide her confusion. As March turned to April, Katherine's riding improved dramatically. She began accompanying Owen on his daily rounds of the ranch, learning the boundaries of the property and the needs of the livestock. These rides revealed a side of Owen she hadn't seen before: his deep knowledge of the land, his gentle way with animals, and occasionally, a dry wit that made her laugh unexpectedly. One afternoon, as they rode along a creek swollen with spring runoff, Owen pointed to a stand of cottonwoods. "That's where I want to build a new house someday," he said. "Better water access, more protection from winter winds." Katherine studied the site. "It's a beautiful spot. What's wrong with the current house?" Owen shrugged. "Nothing, really, but a man doesn't build a house just for himself. He builds it for—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "For a family," Katherine finished quietly. Owen nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Foolish dreaming, I suppose. Not many women willing to be a rancher's wife out here. It's a hard life." "Not so hard," Katherine said before she could stop herself. "There's peace here. Purpose." Their eyes met briefly before Owen turned away, nudging his horse forward. "We should head back. Storm's brewing." That night, as rain lashed the windows, Katherine lay awake, thinking about Owen Crawford and his dream of a house by the cottonwoods. She'd come to the ranch as an indentured servant of sorts, yet increasingly, it felt like home. And Owen quiet. Honorable Owen was becoming more than just her temporary employer. The thought frightened her. In less than 5 months, her debt would be paid, and she would be expected to leave. Attachment would only make that departure more painful. The next morning, Katherine was kneading dough for bread when a loud crash from the barn sent her running outside. She found Owen pinned beneath a fallen beam, his face contorted in pain. "Owen!" She rushed to his side, assessing the situation. The beam was too heavy for her to lift alone. "What happened?" "Rotten support gave way," he gasped. "Left leg's trapped." Katherine grabbed a nearby pitchfork. "I'll use this as a lever. When I lift, you pull yourself out." It took 3 attempts, but finally Owen was free. His left leg lay at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. "We need a doctor," Katherine said, helping him sit up. Owen shook his head. "Nearest doctor's in Loveland, 2 days' ride. You can't leave the ranch unattended that long." "I most certainly can," Katherine argued. "You need medical attention." "No." Owen's voice was firm. "My neighbor Jim Harker was an Army medic. His place is 3 hours' ride north. Get him instead." Katherine wanted to protest but recognized the logic. "Fine, but first let's get you to the house." With Catherine's support and a makeshift crutch, Owen hobbled to the house. The journey was slow and painful, with Owen gritting his teeth against the agony of his broken leg. Once inside, Catherine helped him onto the sofa and propped his injured leg on pillows. "I'll set out for the Harker place immediately. Will you be all right until I return?" Owen's face was gray with pain, but he managed a nod. "Take Daisy. She knows the way if you get lost. Follow the creek north until you see 3 large boulders, then head east." Catherine gathered supplies quickly: water, bandages, her revolver. Owen had insisted on teaching her to shoot, and a map Owen sketched showing the route to the Harker ranch. "I'll be back as soon as I can," she promised, reluctant to leave him but knowing she had no choice. The ride was long and nerve-wracking. Catherine had never ventured this far from the ranch alone, and each unfamiliar sound in the prairie grass made her jump. When she finally spotted the 3 boulders Owen had mentioned, relief washed over her. By mid-afternoon, she reached the Harker homestead, a humble cabin with a well-tended garden. Jim Harker, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes, listened to Catherine's breathless explanation and immediately began packing medical supplies. "Owen's a good man," he said as they rode back together. "Saved my cattle during the blizzard of '76 when I was laid up with pneumonia." "He doesn't talk much about himself," Catherine replied. Jim chuckled. "No, he wouldn't. Crawford men were never ones for idle chatter. His pa was the same way, good as gold but quiet as a church mouse." By the time they returned to the ranch, the sun was setting. They found Owen feverish and semi-conscious, his legs swollen alarmingly. "Clean break," Jim announced after examining him. "But I need to set it before infection takes hold." Catherine held Owen's hand as Jim manipulated the broken bone back into place. Owen's scream of pain tore through her, and tears streamed down her face. "Steady now," Jim murmured, working quickly to splint the leg. "Worst part's over." Over the next few days, Catherine barely left Owen's side. She changed bandages, administered the willow bark tea Jim had left for pain, and kept cool compresses on Owen's forehead when fever threatened. At night, she slept in a chair beside the sofa, waking at his slightest movement. On the 3rd night, Owen's fever broke. Catherine was dozing in her chair when his voice, weak but clear, woke her. "You're still here." Catherine leaned forward, relief flooding through her. "Of course I'm still here. Where else would I be?" "Thought you might run," Owen admitted. "Take your chance at freedom." The suggestion stung more than it should have. "I'm not a prisoner, Owen. I gave my word to work off the debt." "Not just that." Owen's eyes, lucid now, held hers. "You've done more than work these past months. You've cared about the ranch, about—" He swallowed. "No one would blame you for leaving a broken-down cowboy to fend for himself." Catherine took his hand, her heart pounding. "I wouldn't leave you, not like this, not ever if—" She stopped, suddenly aware of what she'd nearly confessed. Owen's fingers tightened around hers. "Catherine." The moment hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Then Rusty barked outside, breaking the spell. "You need rest," Catherine said, withdrawing her hand, "and I should check on the livestock." Owen's recovery was slow but steady. Within 2 weeks, he was mobile on crutches, though limited in what work he could do. Catherine took on more of the ranch responsibilities, rising earlier and working later to ensure nothing was neglected. One morning in early May, Catherine was mending a fence in the north pasture when she spotted riders approaching 3 men, moving with purpose toward the ranch house. Unease prickled along her spine. Grabbing her tools, she hurried back, arriving just as the men dismounted in the yard. Owen stood on the porch, balanced on his crutches, his expression grim. "Catherine," he called when he saw her. "Go inside, please." "What's happening?" she asked, eyeing the strangers warily. The leader of the group, a thin man with a pockmarked face, grinned unpleasantly. Well, well. So this is the girl Morgan's been looking for. Ice formed in Katherine's veins. Morgan, what does he want? Seems your arrangement with Crawford here ain't sitting well with him, the man drawled. Says you were his property first and Crawford had no right to take you. She's not property, Owen said, his voice dangerously quiet. She's working to clear her brother's debt. It's all legal and proper. The man spat tobacco juice into the dust. Morgan don't see it that way. Says the girl was part of the wager, not just the money. He wants her back in Loveland. Katherine stepped forward, fury overriding fear. I'm not going anywhere. Mr. Crawford and I have an agreement. Lady, you ain't got no say in this, the second man, broader and more menacing, cut in. Morgan paid us good money to bring you back. Owen shifted, positioning himself between Katherine and the men despite his injury. Get off my land. Now. Or what, cripple? The leader sneered. You can barely stand. In one fluid motion, Katherine pulled the revolver from her apron pocket and aimed it at the men. He doesn't need to stand to give orders on his own property. Leave. The men hesitated, eyeing the steady gun in Katherine's hand. She's bluffing, the third man muttered. Katherine cocked the hammer. Mr. Crawford taught me to shoot. I can hit a can at 50 paces. You're considerably larger targets. A tense silence fell, broken only by the nervous shuffling of horses. Finally, the leader raised his hands in mock surrender. Fine, we'll go. But Morgan won't be happy. He'll be coming himself next time. Tell Morgan he can speak to the sheriff if he has concerns, Owen said. But Katherine stays here of her own free will. After the men rode away, Katherine's hands began to shake so badly she nearly dropped the gun. Owen hobbled to her side and gently took the weapon. You were magnificent, he said softly. Katherine let out a shaky laugh. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Owen replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It's acting despite it. That night, after a subdued supper, Owen broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. Morgan won't give up easily, he said. Those men will be back, possibly with reinforcements. Katherine nodded, staring into the fire. What do? We could go to the sheriff, Owen suggested. But Morgan has friends in Loveland. Law might not be on our side, especially with only a verbal agreement between us. Could we leave? Katherine asked. Start fresh somewhere else. Owen's expression was pained. This ranch is all I have, my father's legacy. I can't abandon it. Then I should go, Katherine said, though the words felt like glass in her throat. If I'm not here, Morgan has no reason to trouble you. No. Owen's response was immediate and vehement. Running won't solve this, and I won't let you face Morgan alone. Katherine looked up, meeting his intense gaze. What's the alternative? Owen took a deep breath. There's one way to ensure Morgan can never claim you, one way that would supersede any prior arrangement. Katherine's heart began to race. What way is that? Marriage, Owen said simply. As my wife, you'd be legally under my protection. No gambling debt could touch you. The word hung in the air between them, laden with implications beyond the practical solution Owen presented. You would marry me to protect me from Morgan? Katherine asked carefully. Owen stood and crossed to the window, his back to her. Not just for that. Katherine waited, hardly daring to breathe. These past months, Owen continued, his voice low, having you here, it's been more than just having help around the ranch. It's been. He turned to face her. It's been like having a home again, a real home. Katherine rose slowly. Owen. I know it's not romantic, he rushed on. I know it's not what a woman dreams of, but I care for you, Katherine, deeply. And I hope you might feel something for me too. Katherine closed the distance between them, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Ask me properly, Owen Crawford. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Setting aside his crutch, he took her hand and with some difficulty lowered himself to one knee. "Katherine Dawson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not to settle a debt, not to escape Morgan, but because I've fallen in love with you and can't imagine my life without you in it." Tears sprang to Katherine's eyes. "Yes, Owen. Yes, I'll marry you." Owen rose awkwardly, and Katherine steadied him, their faces inches apart. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Owen leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Katherine wound her arms around his neck. When they finally parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I should have done that weeks ago," Katherine smiled. "We have time to make up for it." The wedding took place 2 weeks later at the Harker homestead, with Jim serving as witness and his wife, Martha, providing a simple cake. Katherine wore her best dress, a blue calico she'd carefully mended and embellished with lace from one of Martha's old collars. Owen, standing without crutches for the first time since his accident, wore a clean shirt and his father's string tie. The circuit preacher, passing through on his monthly rounds, performed the ceremony with cheerful efficiency. When he pronounced them man and wife, Owen's kiss was more confident than their first, filled with promise and belonging. That evening, as they returned to the ranch, their ranch now, in truth as well as law, Katherine felt a profound sense of rightness. The home that had been her place of servitude was now her domain as Owen's wife. The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. As Owen helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist, a familiar tension sparked between them. "Welcome home, Mrs. Crawford," he said, his voice husky with emotion. Katherine smiled, taking his hand and leading him toward the house. "Our home." Their wedding night was a revelation, tender, passionate, and surprisingly playful as they discovered each other anew. Owen's gentleness belied his strength, and Katherine's enthusiasm overcame her inexperience. When they finally lay entwined in the pre-dawn darkness, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that what had begun as a business arrangement had transformed into the greatest blessing of her life. The threat from Jasper Morgan materialized a week later. The saloon owner himself arrived at the ranch, accompanied by the same 3 men Katherine had confronted before. Owen and Katherine were working in the garden when the riders approached. Standing shoulder to shoulder, they watched Morgan dismount with surprising agility for a man of his girth. "Crawford," Morgan greeted coldly, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Owen's arm slipped protectively around Katherine's waist. "You're trespassing, Morgan." Morgan's piggy eyes narrowed. "The girl was part of her brother's wager. You had no right to take her." "I'm not a girl, Mr. Morgan," Katherine said evenly. "I'm a married woman, Mrs. Owen Crawford." Morgan's face reddened with anger. "That's impossible. The debt is between you and me now," Owen interrupted. "And it's being paid as we agreed through Katherine's work here at the ranch." "I never agreed to her working here," Morgan spluttered. "She was to work for me in my establishment." "The nature of her work wasn't specified in the agreement you signed," Owen countered. "Only that her labor would satisfy the debt, and as her husband, I have legal authority over her contracts." Morgan's hand moved to his hip, where a pistol was holstered. "I didn't come all this way to be cheated by some crippled rancher and his whore." Owen tensed, but Katherine squeezed his arm in warning. They were outnumbered and outgunned. "Mr. Morgan," Katherine said calmly, "the debt stands at $97.43. I've kept meticulous records of my work against that amount." Morgan blinked, momentarily thrown by her precise accounting. "What of it? My husband and I are prepared to pay the remaining balance in full," Katherine continued. "Today, in cash." This was their contingency plan, the money Owen had been saving for cattle, now set aside to buy their freedom from Morgan's harassment. Morgan's greedy nature warred visibly with his wounded pride. Finally, avarice won. $120. For my trouble in coming out here. 100 flat, Owen countered. Take it or leave with nothing. After a tense negotiation, Morgan accepted the payment, counted it twice, and signed a document Katherine had prepared stating that all debts between the parties were fully satisfied. As Morgan and his men prepared to leave, the saloon owner paused, his gaze lingering on Katherine with undisguised malice. "Your brother's back in Loveland, you know," he said. "Crawled in last week looking for you. Seemed mighty surprised to hear you'd become a rancher's wife." Katherine's heart stuttered. "Thomas is alive." Morgan's smile was cruel. "For now, boy's got a talent for making enemies. Shame if something were to happen to him before you got a chance to say hello." The implied threat hung in the air as Morgan mounted his horse and led his men away. Owen turned to Katherine, concern etched on his face. "Your brother. Do you want to go to him?" Katherine wrestled with conflicting emotions, relief that Thomas was alive, anger at his betrayal, and fear for his safety. "He's still my brother," she said finally, "despite everything." Owen nodded. "We'll go to Loveland tomorrow, together." The journey to Loveland the next day was tense. Katherine alternated between worry for Thomas and apprehension about returning to the town where her ordeal had begun. Owen remained supportive but quiet, clearly giving her space to process her thoughts. They found Thomas in the town jail, bruised and unkempt but very much alive. The sheriff, a no-nonsense woman named Martha Jenkins, explained that Thomas had been arrested for brawling and couldn't pay his fine. "Katherine," Thomas exclaimed when they entered the cell block. "Thank God. I've been looking everywhere for you." Katherine regarded her brother coolly. "Have you? After selling me to Jasper Morgan to cover your gambling debts," Thomas had the grace to look ashamed. "I never meant for that to happen. Morgan tricked me. Said if I lost, he'd just hold you as collateral until I paid him back." "And then you ran," Katherine said flatly. "I went to find work," Thomas protested. "In the mines up north. Was going to earn enough to get you back, I swear." Owen, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "Sheriff, what's the fine for Mr. Dawson's release?" The sheriff named a sum that made Katherine wince. Without hesitation, Owen counted out the money and handed it over. Thomas looked between them, confusion evident. "Who's this?" "Owen Crawford," Katherine said. "My husband." Thomas's jaw dropped. "Husband? But how, when?" "It's a long story," Katherine replied. "One best told over a meal. You look like you haven't eaten properly in months." Over lunch at the town's respectable hotel restaurant, Katherine explained the events following Thomas's disappearance, her arrangement with Owen, their growing feelings for each other, and finally, their marriage. She omitted Morgan's threats and Owen's injury, seeing no need to burden her brother with those details. Thomas listened with increasing discomfort, unable to meet his sister's eyes. When she finished, he stared into his coffee cup. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said quietly. "What I did was unforgivable." Katherine reached across the table and took his hand. "You're right, it was, but you're still my brother and I still love you." Thomas looked up, hope kindling in his eyes. "Really, family is family," Owen interjected. "And Katherine is my family now, which makes you family too." Thomas studied Owen with new respect. "You're a better man than I am, Crawford." "No argument there," Owen agreed, but his tone was light, without malice. By the end of the meal, a tentative peace had been established. Thomas accepted Katherine and Owen's invitation to stay at the ranch while he recuperated and planned his next steps. "I could help around the place," Thomas offered. "Pay back some of what I owe you both." Katherine exchanged glances with Owen, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "We could use the help," Katherine said, especially with Owen's leg still healing. As they prepared to leave Loveland, Katherine noticed Jasper Morgan watching them from the shadows of his saloon. The man's expression was cold, calculating, and filled with barely contained rage. "We should go," Katherine murmured to Owen. "Morgan's looking for trouble." Owen followed her gaze and nodded, helping her into the wagon. Thomas, who had gone to retrieve his few belongings from the boarding house, joined them moments later. They were nearly out of town when a shot rang out, splintering the wagon seat inches from Katherine's hand. Owen immediately pulled her down, shielding her with his body as more shots followed. "It's Morgan!" Thomas shouted, diving for cover. Owen grabbed the rifle stowed under the seat and returned fire, aiming at the saloon porch where Morgan and his men had positioned themselves. The sheriff and her deputies arrived quickly, drawn by the gunfire. In the ensuing chaos, Morgan was wounded in the shoulder and 2 of his men were arrested. Morgan himself, bleeding but defiant, was dragged to jail, cursing Owen and Katherine with every step. "This isn't over, Crawford," he shouted as the sheriff pushed him into a cell. "No man makes a fool of Jasper Morgan and lives to tell about it." The sheriff approached their wagon where Owen was checking Katherine for injuries. "You folks all right?" Sheriff Jenkins asked. "We're unhurt," Owen confirmed. "But that man tried to kill my wife." The sheriff nodded grimly. "Morgan's had this coming for years. Between the ambush and witness statements about his threats, he'll be facing serious charges." "Will you need us to testify?" Katherine asked, still shaking from the close call. "Most likely," the sheriff replied, "but not for some time. Court doesn't come through until fall." Owen helped Katherine back onto the wagon seat. "We'll be at the ranch. Send word when you need us." As they left Loveland behind, Katherine leaned against Owen's shoulder, emotionally and physically exhausted. Thomas rode alongside the wagon, uncharacteristically subdued. "I'm sorry," he said after they'd traveled several miles. "This is all my fault if I hadn't gotten involved with Morgan." "What's done is done," Owen said firmly. "We look forward now, not back." Katherine squeezed Owen's hand, grateful for his steady presence and forgiving nature. The next few weeks brought significant changes to the Crawford ranch. Thomas proved surprisingly adept at ranch work, throwing himself into physical labor with the zeal of a man seeking redemption. Under Owen's guidance, he learned to mend fences, tend livestock, and even break young horses. Katherine, meanwhile, found herself struggling with unexpected fatigue and morning sickness. When she finally confided her suspicions to Owen, his joy was boundless. "A baby," he whispered, placing a reverent hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby," Katherine nodded, tears of happiness welling in her eyes. "Due in winter, I think, around Christmas." Owen gathered her into his arms, his face alight with wonder. "I love you, Katherine Crawford." More than I ever thought possible. The news of Katherine's pregnancy cemented Thomas's decision to remain at the ranch. "You'll need help with the heavy work," he insisted when Katherine suggested he might want to move on. "And I'd like to know my niece or nephew." By summer's end, the ranch was thriving. With Thomas's help, Owen was able to increase the herd and build the new barn he'd been planning for years. Katherine's garden yielded abundantly, and she began putting up preserves for the winter ahead. In late September, Sheriff Jenkins sent word that Jasper Morgan's trial was scheduled for the first week of October. The news cast a shadow over the ranch's domestic happiness. "I don't want you to go," Owen said as they lay in bed the night before their departure for Loveland. "Not in your condition." Katherine was now visibly pregnant, her belly gently rounded beneath her nightgown. "I have to testify, Owen. So do you and Thomas. It's the only way to ensure Morgan faces justice." Owen pulled her closer, his hand protectively covering her stomach. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you, either of you. Nothing will happen, Katherine promised, though she shared his unease. The sheriff will have security at the courthouse, and will come straight home afterward. The trial lasted 3 days. Katherine testified about Morgan's attempt to claim her as property, while Owen and Thomas corroborated her account and described the ambush as they left town. Other witnesses came forward with tales of Morgan's misdeeds: rigged gambling, violence against women, and various fraudulent schemes. On the 3rd day, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Morgan to 15 years in the territorial prison, with the possibility of early release only for exemplary behavior. As Morgan was led away, he locked eyes with Katherine, his gaze burning with hatred. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. Katherine shivered despite the courtroom's warmth, instinctively placing a hand on her belly. Owen's arm tightened around her shoulders. "It is over," he whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." The return journey to the ranch was jubilant, with Thomas regaling them with increasingly elaborate plans for the baby's room. Katherine laughed at his enthusiasm, grateful for how far they'd come as a family in the months since her life had been so dramatically upended. As winter approached, the ranch prepared for the coming cold. Owen and Thomas reinforced the barn and corrals, while Katherine transformed the small room adjacent to the master bedroom into a nursery. Owen crafted a cradle from pine, carving intricate designs of stars and mountains along the sides. "For our little one to dream of far horizons," he explained when Katherine admired his handiwork. Christmas Eve arrived with a light snowfall that transformed the prairie into a glittering wonderland. Katherine, now in her 9th month, moved slowly around the kitchen, preparing a special dinner to celebrate both the holiday and their first anniversary of meeting. "Should you be on your feet?" Owen fretted, entering the kitchen with an armload of firewood. Katherine smiled, rubbing her lower back. "I'm fine. The baby's not due for another week, according to Martha Harker's calculations." As if summoned by her name, there was a knock at the door. Thomas opened it to reveal Jim and Martha Harker, bundled against the cold and bearing gifts. "Thought we'd stop by on our way to town," Jim explained, stamping snow from his boots. "Check on the little mother." Martha immediately took charge, shooing Katherine to a chair and finishing the dinner preparations with brisk efficiency. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and reminiscences of the year past. "Hard to believe it's been less than a year since you came to the ranch," Jim remarked to Katherine. "Seems like you've always been here." "It feels that way to me too," Katherine replied, meeting Owen's warm gaze across the table. After dinner, as they gathered around the fire, Katherine felt the first twinge of discomfort. She dismissed it as indigestion, not wanting to alarm anyone. But when the pains returned with increasing frequency, Martha's experienced eye noticed Katherine's discomfort. "How long have you been having pains, dear?" she asked quietly. Katherine blinked in surprise. "Just this evening, but the baby isn't due yet." Martha patted her hand. "Babies come when they're ready, not when we expect them." As the night progressed, it became clear that the Crawford baby was indeed on its way. Thomas was dispatched to fetch water and clean linens, while Jim took Owen aside to offer moral support. Martha transformed the bedroom into a birthing chamber with practiced ease. The labor lasted through the night, with Katherine drawing strength from Owen's steady presence. He never left her side, wiping her brow, supporting her through contractions, and murmuring words of encouragement and love. As dawn broke on Christmas morning, the first cry of their son echoed through the ranch house. Martha placed the swaddled infant in Katherine's arms, her face wreathed in smiles. "A fine boy," she announced. strong lungs in all his fingers and toes. Owen gazed at his son in wonder, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's downy head, "just like his mother." Katherine looked up at her husband, her heart overflowing with love. "What shall we name him?" Owen considered for a moment. "James Thomas Crawford," he suggested, "after the men who helped bring us together." From the doorway, where he'd been nervously hovering, Thomas let out a choked sound of surprise and gratitude. "It's perfect," Katherine agreed, watching as Owen carefully took their son into his arms. The next few months passed in a blur of midnight feedings, diaper changes, and the countless small miracles of watching their son grow. Little James Jamie, to the family, thrived under the adoring attention of his parents and uncle. Thomas, to everyone's surprise, proved to be a natural with the baby. "Never thought I'd be good with kids," he admitted one evening as he gently rocked Jamie to sleep. "But this little fellow has changed my mind about a lot of things." By spring, the ranch was busier than ever. Owen and Thomas expanded the cattle operation, while Katherine managed the household and tended to Jamie. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the increased workload, building a bunkhouse near the barn to accommodate them. In June, an unexpected letter arrived from St. Louis. Katherine's former neighbor wrote that her father's old shop had been sold, and the new owners had found documents indicating that Jacob Dawson had owned shares in a small silver mine near Denver. "Could be nothing," Thomas said when Katherine showed him the letter. "Or could be something substantial." Owen studied the paperwork that had been enclosed. "Worth investigating, at least. Denver's not too far. We could make a trip of it once the summer work is done." In September, with the ranch secure under Thomas's watchful eye, Owen and Katherine journeyed to Denver with 6-month-old Jamie. The mining company confirmed that Jacob Dawson's shares, while modest, had appreciated considerably over the years. The sum was enough to pay off the remaining mortgage on the ranch and still leave a comfortable nest egg for Jamie's education. "Your father was looking out for you, even after he was gone," Owen said as they left the lawyer's office, the settlement check safely tucked away. Katherine nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "I wish he could have met you and Jamie. He would have loved you both so much. He would have been proud of the woman you've become," Owen replied, kissing her forehead. "I know I am." Their return to the ranch coincided with the anniversary of Katherine's arrival. To mark the occasion, Owen led her to the stand of cottonwoods by the creek, the spot he'd once pointed out as his dream location for a new home. "I've been thinking," he said as Jamie cooed happily in Katherine's arms. "With the mine shares and the ranch doing well, we could build here now, a proper home for our family." Katherine surveyed the peaceful setting, imagining a house filled with children's laughter. "I'd like that," she said. "But Owen, you should know we might need to make it a bit larger than originally planned." Owen looked at her quizzically. "Oh," Katherine's smile was radiant. "Jamie's going to be a big brother come spring." Owen's whoop of joy startled a flock of birds from the cottonwoods. He lifted Katherine and Jamie into a careful embrace, his face alight with happiness. "I love you, Katherine Crawford," he said when he could finally speak. "You and our children are the greatest blessings of my life." Katherine leaned into his embrace, her heart full to overflowing. "And you are mine, Owen Crawford, the man who paid a debt with his hands and won my heart in the process." In the years that followed, the Crawford family prospered. The new house by the cottonwoods was completed in time for the birth of their daughter, Emma Rose, in April. Thomas eventually married Martha Harker's niece, Sarah, and built a small house on the northern edge of the ranch property. Jasper Morgan served 12 years of his 15-year sentence before being released. He left Wyoming Territory immediately, heading west to California, never to trouble the Crawfords again. On Katherine and Owen's 5th wedding anniversary, they stood on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard with their cousins. Thomas and Sarah's twins toddled after Jamie, who at 4 was a natural leader, while Owen cradled 2-year-old Emma and their newest addition, 3-month-old Michael. "Did you ever imagine this?" Katherine asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "That day in Loveland when you offered to pay my brother's debt," Owen smiled, remembering the frightened yet determined young woman who had captivated him from their first meeting. "I hoped," he admitted, "but the reality is far better than any dream I could have had." Katherine turned in his arms, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Thank you for saving me." Owen's arms tightened around her. "You saved me right back, Katherine, from loneliness, from a life half-lived." As the Wyoming sun set behind the mountains, painting the prairie in gold and crimson, Owen and Katherine Crawford stood together, surrounded by the family they had built from an unlikely beginning, a testament to the enduring power of love born in the most unexpected circumstances.